Hello, Professor. I'm going to make a long-winded video to you. I'm going to explain some of these things and an alternate perspective on them. And I'm going to be honest, but you have to understand, when I characterize your position, I don't live with you. I'm not a student. I don't know you. I presume, I truly believe it impossible that you don't have a full life that I don't know about, even though there's some glimpses onto that as well. But a full life, this is just a little window that I see. So consider my characterizations about that window. Okay?
Okay, so someone sent me a video of John Paul Dorn talking about why TJ doesn't do enough to help people and isn't kind of complaining about him not, I guess, trying to save the world more with his channel.
What John suggested is impossible. And John is struggling with his, to be generous, with a predilection to be a concerned troll. Right? So, like, for example, he made a comedy video that's subtly so people wouldn't know it. I consider it from the Andy Kaufman-esque area of performance art. And where, he was like concerned trolling about Coughlin and taking Thunderfoot's side, where he really thinks, like a lot of the more modern thinkers, about Thunderfoot's kind of atheism, that it's pretty much bullshit, that he's made a hypocrite of himself. I think it's hard to pin John down, and I don't want to pin him down in the sense that maybe he's figuring some of those ideas out. He could speak for himself. However, I don't think this video you're referring to is concern trolling, but it is sort of, people that do a certain kind of trolling. Of course, it relates to how they're really thinking. So he's expressing how he really thinks, but a lot of people think this kind of thing. Look at all those people he's got. He should do something good with them. Why do you think if he was doing something good with the people that were watching him, why would they be watching him? This is like The Amazing Atheist has this movie coming out. I saw a trailer for it. And, he's talking about his subscribers as people that believe everything he says. No, even the ones that are expressing that, they obviously don't really know what they think, if they could even express such a thing. You can say, I have really compatible ideas, but the point at which you're talking for me, man, it's a delusion. It's an intellectual delusion. I hope you would agree with that. And, and I'm not now, but I have been subscribed to TJ in the past, and it was never because I agreed with him. I think people obviously subscribe for very different reasons than agreement, mostly because they think there's a spectacle to see. So they are really choosing. At this point, it's more like the audience should be berated for not doing something useful with TJ, right? The performer, I'm in control because I'm getting paid money from advertising and stuff. No, they're in control because you have to say things that keep that all going. You are now slave to that system. One of the beautiful things about the internet is it's like the idea that's never been totally realized, of citizen politics, that people from the real, regular world should also be some of our representatives, so they have the experiences like that. I like people that have some life going on and are expressing their feelings here, because see, then their professional reputation is not on the line. It's at least a much more free conversation. So what John was asking about TJ is just a total misunderstanding of psychology and how popularity works, and whose behavior is being controlled when you have a popularity and dependency in a group. It's like all the praise is going this way, but that just leads to psychological confusion. The fact is, the popular person is being controlled much more because they have to do a certain thing. Everybody else is going, boy, they just always do things right. Well, they're having to realize that. Even if they're lucky and just have these kinds of personality or charisma that people respond to, eventually they'll see that response, they'll learn what it is, and they will reinforce that if they care about the popularity. So they will let it control them, and that is control. So let's just not even consider this.
I thought what I would do here is just for a moment is to try to talk about, I guess, why I don't like YouTube, and um, and I guess it's going to be a concern that I have about American culture.
Well, let's talk about the American culture just a little bit. YouTube covers a very wide swath of actually even worldwide culture. You can come on here and investigate any intellectual pursuit. And it turns out that's anything. That's including, jackass pranks, intellectual. Well, you get the information out of it. So the intellectual, the information part could be abstracted out, and you could do anything, and it covers, because we could think about anything, covers all kinds of stuff. You were responsible for the cross-section you cut. And that was the thing, you see. I replied to you years ago many times. You didn't reply. A couple times you replied and said, that isn't representing me, and that's why I don't have time. But then that was fine. I didn't complain until you started talking about how there wasn't anything worth responding to. And you're responding to Gary. And you're going, there's nothing worth responding to. Yeah, I just found a guy who has borderline personality disorder, and for a year he's had a channel where he's talking about his recovery, trying to help other people figure out how to recover, and what to do with the people that might have these kind of BPD or similar kinds of issues, mental health activism, talking about the piece Fox did on cutting recently. It's very interesting stuff. You were responsible for the path you cut. And there are book culture kinds of channels right on YouTube. You got TED, you got the Stanford, there's all these news networks. There's things that present for you to think that are non-conversational. That is represented. But you're kind of complaining about the conversational aspect. That's what I'm intending to explain in this video.
My generation and the generations that came, after me, and some of this was, I'm going to post a link down to it. Laughing Out Loud had put together sort of a fun little clip that I think it was somewhat of a spoof of me, but it was a clip of me ranting about how I feel sorry for anyone who sits around on YouTube and listens to people on YouTube, and I still feel that way.
Well, it's interesting because I don't watch your videos anymore because you're not engaging. And you might think of that word differently, like an engaging book. But I mean, you don't engage with people. You complain that there's nobody worth engaging with. Now, first of all, this is just one aspect. This is a hobby that's a significant hobby in my life. But you think it means I don't read books, or I don't learn new things, or I don't have something to be productive in? Seriously, the YouTube has consumed your life. As soon as you do it, everything else in your life has become secondary, because that's how you're talking. And it's ridiculous, too. I mean, there was a guy who kind of had to leave, the trolling, having to deal with trolls. I think it's a fine thing for many of us, that we should have to master our own emotions and the ways we're manipulated by people that don't even know us, and to solve that. But there was one guy, I think this got too much for him. He was about 21, 23 years old, something like this. He said he had a mentality of a 13-year-old. He was wheelchair bound. He was obviously mentally handicapped. He had great ideas and great opinions. Great ideas that are never going to make it into a book, Professor Anton. And nobody's burning any books so that we can make videos. And you might say, oh, it's taking over. I really don't think so. I don't think somebody was reading Wittgenstein and said, and opened a YouTube channel and then just forgot about reading it. More likely, they'll actually finish that book because it's something they can talk about. This hobby generates energy for the other things that interest you, right? You want every part of intellectual culture to be just sitting there and absorbing from people who are dead, or at least metaphorically in some principle there's an idealization of that kind of idea. That happens. That's a great thing. I do that a lot. And you say I don't exist on the internet, that you know, Composer 63 doesn't exist, that you know, you are mistaken. Every single kind of thing exists, but it tends towards the reality. People come onto the internet and they're like, I have an idea and I'm going to promote it, and that's difficult. What's the point? Well, the point is, well, how do we enjoy it? Those of us that are coming here to learn and absorb. And it's not going to be adopt, like you said with the book. You can read a book and it's like you're becoming them and taking their soul into your body or something. Well, that's the beauty of the conversational. There's none of that kind of an illusion. You just learn from things. You might learn how to put your own argument better, but when you do that, it means you're taking some aspect, some little kernel, maybe it wasn't important to you, but that you had been putting into your rhetoric. So you're improving your argument, and you can learn and change, and you can realize why you actually disagree with something in more detail than you knew to begin with. You can only do this through the engagement. You know, with the book, it's very easy just to do what you want. You act like you are paying respects to all these authors, but I don't know. I have a philosophy degree. I've read every Nietzsche book several times. Your interpretation of Nietzsche is way off the mark. If you had an experience of adopting Nietzschean spirit or perspectives, I don't think it happened. And you won't find that out from Nietzsche. He's dead. You know, you discuss it with me, you could find it out, but I think you don't want to find it out. You're like, you've totally misunderstood it, huh? But I only can go with what you say, and you say something like that, I want to respond. It's a chance for you to clarify and say, well, okay, maybe I said that it kind of meant that, but what I really think is this, or no, I can reinforce that. You know, that interchange has some chance of resolving ideas, which are way more important than the respect or worrying about that situation. You know, when you mentioned later in this video about people coming to intellectuals, say, coming together, they don't say, I've influenced this many people and stuff. They say, here's my influences and here's my... That was like, what? That's not how it is in the physical sciences. Right? I'm not sure it's really... my experience is the intellectuals come together and start talking about ideas. But maybe that's from the physical sciences. The physical sciences have a great tradition. You don't spend that much time talking about other people's ideas. You cite their facts and their papers. If they had a really good argument and you're saying, I'm assuming this is all right, you put a citation. You don't even go into it because you're not reiterating, regurgitating. You're adding. So you're saying, I'm going to take that as really the main way that people respectfully in the physical sciences deal with their the giants upon whose shoulders they stand, is when they're naming something, a new particle or a facility or something, and then you start to see who the luminaries are and the respect, and it's a very genuine thing. But when you meet, you talk about ideas, right? So I specifically think that. I mean, would it help you to say, okay, look, my influences come from first of all, natural sciences. Second of all, a sort of cultural realization of how messed up the world was. That was not hidden from me. In Native American genocide, I still found there were things nobody told me, but that's just because those facts are so well hidden, right? And then philosophically, maybe if you're book-wise, you know, it's the philosophers like Camus, you know, Kierkegaard, except for I have a bigotry against philosophers that go into Christianity as a Christian, and so that's a bigotry. I try to overcome that, and I've read some Kierkegaard, but it's hard for me to really get into a whole book or praise any work of his, but obviously that's a poetic kind of thing, sort of. The Camus, the fact that there is a pessimistic rational argument about the world, that it has a lot of compelling aspects, and Camus solved that, basically, that explains why those of us that see the world is messed up and there's endless work to do on it, and that even if we solve that work, it could slip away and you have ever vigilance and all of this stuff. And how come we still want to live it? How come we poetic people and Epicureans can have a positive life in struggle, even the struggle isn't finished but when we die, and how can we do that? And that's my but why would I present that all the time? And I don't want to say the names of philosophers that then get people thinking that. Like you may say something about Nietzsche, and I have to go, that's a misinterpretation of Nietzsche. If you just said your own idea, you know, it's like, I read Nietzsche, and then I got this idea, and here's my idea, you know, then I wouldn't say, wow, you misunderstood him, right? But you have to say Nietzsche, and then you want to ignore that, okay, let's argue about Nietzsche and interpretation. Or is it the idea? Let's get those separate. That's the problem with the book culture as you're presenting it, is you don't seem to realize we could just talk about the ideas, which is what's happening on here. And if you want to know about all the noise and the chaos of it, well, and the presence of trolls, and why people respond to rudeness, well, you respond to Gary and say there's nothing worth responding to, and there's people far less rude. Even when I get upset, I'm much more on point and less just, you know, ridiculously, like, theoretically rude. But you still are going to respond to that, complain about that. Well, why do you respond to him? I'll tell you why. One, when somebody is rude, it highlights a sentence right there, and you can just answer that. He says, you said blah, 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 that makes you a total fucktard. Then, boom, focuses, so people can do that. Two, he replies all the time to people by name in the titles, which makes it much more likely to watch it and respond, even if someone thinks it's ludicrous. Okay, it riles up a motivational force, you know, biochemically to be talked to that way, right? And he is touching subjects that people care about, right? That's why. Don't talk to him if that's not good enough. Don't, whatever, right?
And that's partly why, I don't know how to say it, I'm a bad YouTuber.
If you want to see more book culture, you just have to bring that culture. You say you're a bad YouTuber and stuff with this. Yeah, because you want to present things that are taken like books are taken, but you admit that what you say is more sloppy, is more conversational. And yet you're complaining about the conversational aspects and saying we should emulate the kind of conversation you have with the dead author. You know, which is just basically, it makes conversation impossible. Right, and so you're praising that. You're presenting a conversational style. You should just be writing books, or if you want to make videos, make well-produced videos. Make books, you know, in video form. You know, documentary or something about your idea. Or maybe you just don't like that medium. Okay, but you're struggling about, you're complaining about the medium, and look, if you want to just do the book kind of thing, do books, go do books. But then you're going to say, but then you guys won't be paying attention to me. You know, people have actually heard about your book because of this channel, probably. Some people. That's not our problem. If you find it intolerable to be in the conversational public subculture, the conversational subculture, whatever else you want to call it, and bring in a book influence, then the book influence won't be in here. If no bookish type people want to take part in this, then yeah, that's right, you'll have to hope that we hear about it. But you know what? You are here, you said, with Stephen Molyneux, because you were kind of made to. It's not a real great motivation that you've described. Okay, so that's your frustration. It's a very personal thing, and you're thinking it's an existential, angsty thing about YouTube. It's about you and why you're here, right? And you can't understand why anybody's here. It's a waste of your time to watch these videos. Well, that's because that's how you feel. You feel guilty when you're watching a video. I don't feel guilty when I'm watching this guy I found describe what it's like to be bipolar, borderline, what people can do about it, that no borderline people, or if they are borderline. That's fucking great stuff. I'm supposed to feel guilty because I could be doing other things that I do. No. You're having a personal thing because of the way you take it. It's like, you're like, I don't want to take part in this. This isn't the kind of communication I like. And then you're like, why isn't the kind of communication I like a part of this because you don't want to take part. That's why people like you don't want to take part, because you don't get the kind of citation reaction that you want. You don't get the kind of here's who I am as described by other people. You know, you have to just go and it's an individual. Wow, that's a peculiar thing, category to itself. That's how real thinking is. Okay, it's Saturday and I have to work. So I'm going to finish this later. This is one of two, I guess. Cheers.